The first crack in the foundation of my perfectly constructed life appeared not with a bang, but with the soft, insidious scent of a stranger's perfume on my husband's collar. It was a Thursday. Carl had come home late from work again, mumbling about a catastrophic server failure that required the entire IT department to stay and manually restore data from backups. He'd kissed my forehead, his lips dry and hurried, and headed straight for the shower. As he passed me, hanging his suit jacket on the back of a kitchen chair, a wave of fragrance hit me. A cloying, expensive blend of night-blooming jasmine and sandalwood that was most certainly not the crisp, aquatic cologne I bought for him every Christmas. I stood frozen in the middle of our immaculate kitchen, the salad I was preparing for dinner forgotten. My fingers, slick with olive oil, trembled. It's nothing, I told myself, the mantra a desperate, familiar shield. He was in close quarters with a female colleague. The air in the server room is stale, the scent transfers. It means nothing. We had been married for 7 years, and in that time, Carl had risen from a junior developer to a powerful vice president of technology at a booming fintech startup. With power came long hours, immense pressure, and a gradual glacial distance that had settled between us. I'd chalked it up to stress, to the natural ebb and flow of a long-term marriage. I'd focused on my own career as an interior designer, on maintaining our beautiful home, on being the supportive, understanding wife. But the perfume was a tangible ghost in the room. I decided to say nothing. Confrontation without evidence was a fool's errand. It would only give him a chance to craft a better lie. Instead, I became a silent archaeologist of my own life, sifting through the layers of our shared existence for other artifacts of betrayal. I started checking his phone when he was in the shower, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. He'd changed his passcode. That simple 6-digit number was a fortress wall I couldn't breach. I began noting the mileage on his car, cross-referencing his credit card statements with his stated whereabouts. I was living in a state of constant low-grade panic, my stomach a tight knot of suspicion and dread. The catalyst, the event that ripped the veil away completely, was the phone call from Cassandra. My best friend. My sister in all but blood. We'd met in an art history class in college, two hopelessly impractical dreamers surrounded by future accountants and engineers. She was the vibrant, chaotic Ian to my organized, cautious Young. She was the one who had held my hair back when I got sick at a frat party, who had cheered louder than anyone at my wedding, and who had sobbed in my arms when her own series of disastrous relationships ended. She was currently single, having recently extricated herself from a toxic situationship with a musician who had more guitars than job prospects. "Maya, you need to come over." Her voice was a strained whisper on the phone, tight with tears. "Right now. I found something. About Carl." Every nerve ending in my body fired at once. "What? What is it? Are you okay? Just come. Please. And don't tell him you're coming to see me." The line went dead. I drove to her apartment in a haze, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. 1,000 horrific scenarios played out in my mind. Had he borrowed money from her? Had he gotten involved in something illegal? Had the perfume belonged to her? The last thought was so absurd, so vomitously unimaginable, that I dismissed it instantly. This was Cassandra. He would never. I found her sitting on the floor of her living room, surrounded by a sea of photographs and printouts. Her face was pale and streaked with tears. She looked up at me, her eyes pools of devastation. "Oh, Maya," she breathed. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What is all this?" I asked, my voice trembling as I knelt beside her. She took a deep, shuddering breath. "You know, I've been doing that freelance digital marketing for Carl's company, setting up their new social media campaigns." I nodded. Carl had gotten her the contract a few months back, a generous gesture to help her out financially. I needed some analytics from the company's cloud drive. I was poking around looking for the right folder, and I found this. She handed me a single sheet of paper. It was a bank statement. Not from our joint account, but from an account at a bank I'd never heard of under Carl's name. The balance took my breath away. It was over $2 million. My mind reeled. We had a healthy savings, but nothing like this. Where had this money come from? My eyes scanned down the list of transactions. There were massive, regular deposits from what was labeled as Ethelred Holdings. And then my eyes snagged on a series of outgoing wires. Large 5-figure sums, all sent to the same recipient. C. Interiors. Cassandra pointed a trembling finger at the name. I looked it up, Maya. It's a shell company, registered in the Cayman Islands. The registered agent. It's a woman named Chloe Green. The name meant nothing to me. It was a hollow, empty sound. Who is that? I whispered. I dug deeper, Cassandra said, her voice gaining a grim, determined edge. She handed me another photograph, this one printed on plain copy paper. It was a grainy, long-lens shot, taken from across a restaurant. It showed Carl, his face animated in a way I hadn't seen in years, laughing. And across from him, her hand resting on his forearm, was a stunningly beautiful woman in her late 20s. She had a cascade of honey blonde hair and an easy, confident smile. She was wearing a simple but exquisitely cut black dress. And on the table next to her wine glass was a small, familiar handbag. A Birkin bag that Carl had supposedly won in a company raffle 6 months ago. A raffle I'd now realized had never been announced to any other employees. That's her, Cassandra said softly. Chloe Green. She's a consultant his company has been using. According to the internal emails I found, Ethelred Holdings is her parent company. He's been funneling company money into his private account, and then paying it right back to her. It's a shell game. Embezzlement on a massive scale. The room tilted. I slumped back onto the floor, the papers slipping from my numb fingers. It wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. A theft. He wasn't just betraying our marriage. He was betraying his company, his colleagues, the law. The sheer scale of his duplicity was staggering. Why? I finally managed to choke out. Why would he do this? We have enough money. We have a good life. Cassandra's expression was a mixture of pity and fury. Power, Maya. It's always about power. He's not just stealing money, he's building an empire with her. Look at this. She shuffled through more papers and produced a glossy brochure for a luxury real estate development in Costa Rica. This is an Ethelred project. This is where the money is going. This is their future. He's funding their paradise with stolen cash. The pieces were clicking into place with the brutal final sound of a cell door slamming shut. The late nights. The distance. The secret phone. The perfume. It all pointed to a parallel life, a grand criminal romance he was conducting right under my nose. And I, the dutiful, trusting wife, had been completely blind. What do? I asked, my voice small and broken. I have to go to the police. To his company. No. Cassandra's response was sharp, immediate. She grabbed my hands, her grip almost painfully tight. You can't, Maya. Not yet. If you tip him off, he'll transfer the money, destroy the evidence, and you'll be left with nothing. He'll divorce you and you'll get half of what's left in your real accounts, which is probably peanuts compared to what he's hidden. And without concrete proof, his company might not believe you. They might even think you were in on it. The logic was cold and ruthless, but it was sound. I felt utterly out of my depth. Then what? A fierce, protective light ignited in Cassandra's eyes. We fight fire with fire. We get our own evidence. We protect you. We make sure that when this all comes crashing down, he's the one buried in the rubble, not you. She outlined a plan with a precision that surprised me. We would document everything. She would continue to access the company servers, downloading every incriminating file, every email, every transaction record. I would search our house for any physical evidence: burner phones, hidden documents, keys to safety deposit boxes. We need to be smart, Maya. Smarter than him, she said, her voice low and intense. He thinks you're oblivious. He thinks he's the smartest man in the room. We're going to use that against him. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the same Maya, making Carl's coffee, listening to his fabricated stories about work, pretending to be concerned about his stress levels. By night, I was a spy in my own home. I went through his office files when he was asleep. I checked the pockets of every suit jacket, the compartments of every briefcase. I found nothing. Carl was meticulous. The only evidence was digital, locked away in a cloud server that only Cassandra could access. My relationship with Cassandra deepened and intensified through this shared secret. She was my lifeline, my war general, my confessor. We spoke in hushed, urgent tones on encrypted messaging apps. We met in person at out-of-the-way cafes, our heads bent together over laptops and documents. She was the one who validated my rage, who stoked the fires of my indignation. "Look at this," she'd whisper, showing me an email where Carl and Chloe discussed purchasing a yacht. "He's planning a life with her. A life he's building by stealing from you." The bitterness curdled inside me, hardening into a core of solid, unyielding resolve. I was no longer the betrayed wife. I was a soldier preparing for battle. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. I was vacuuming the bedroom, my mind a million miles away, when the vacuum cleaner nozzle caught on a loose floorboard under our large king-sized bed. It was an old house and some of the floorboards were warped. I'd never given it a second thought. But now, on my hands and knees, I noticed that one board was slightly more raised than the others. My heart began to pound. I managed to pry it up with my fingernails. Beneath it lay a small fireproof lockbox. It wasn't locked. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid. Inside was a sleek, black smartphone I'd never seen before, a charger, a set of keys, and a passport. I opened the passport. It was Carl's photo, but the name was David Miller. A fake. A bolt of pure, undiluted fear shot through me. This wasn't just about embezzlement and a new life. This was about a complete disappearance. I took the burner phone and hid it in my own hiding place, inside a zipped compartment of my winter boot in the back of the closet. I didn't turn it on. I was afraid he had it tracked. I left everything else exactly as I found it. That night I showed Cassandra what I had found. Her eyes widened with a mixture of fear and triumph. "This is it, Maya. This is the proof we need. The fake passport. This proves intent to flee. We have to move now." "We have everything," I said, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. "The bank records, the emails, the photos, the fake passport. Let's take it to the authorities. Let's end this." "Not yet," Cassandra said, a strange new energy in her voice. "There's one more thing. The final piece. We need to know where the physical cash is. That $2 million. It's not just sitting in that account. He's probably converted a lot of it to cash or bearer bonds for when they run. We need to find it. If we can find the money, you can secure it before the company or the government freezes everything." It made a terrible sense. But how? "The keys," Cassandra said, her eyes gleaming. "The keys in the lockbox. One of them is for a safety deposit box. I'm sure of it. We need to find out which bank." The following day I called in sick to work. I took the set of keys from the lockbox and visited every major bank in the city's financial district, pretending to be a forgetful wife who had lost her box number but needed to check on something. It was a humiliating, nerve-wracking process. At the fourth bank, a teller at First Metropolitan Trust, after I showed her the key, smiled and said, "Of course, Mrs. Miller. Let me get the manager for you." Miller. David Miller. My blood ran cold. I had found it. I didn't open the box. I couldn't without Carl or David present. But I knew where it was. I reported back to Cassandra. She was ecstatic. "Perfect. This is perfect, Maya. Now we need to get him out of the house for a full day. We need to get that passport and those keys and take them to the police. With that, they can get a warrant to open the box." The opportunity came sooner than expected. Carl announced he had to go on a last-minute overnight business trip to their company's headquarters in another state to finalize the quarterly reports. He was lying, of course. He was probably going to see Chloe to finalize their escape plan. I helped him pack, my smile a brittle, fragile thing. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I called Cassandra. "He's gone. It's time." She arrived within 20 minutes, her face flushed with purpose. We went into the bedroom, retrieved the lockbox, and laid its contents on the bed. The fake passport, the keys. We had one. We had the evidence to destroy him. "It's over, Maya," Cassandra said, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. "You're safe. You're going to be rich and he's going to prison." I nodded, but a strange unease was creeping over me. Something about her demeanor. The gleam in her eye was too bright, too hungry. It wasn't the righteous anger of a best friend. It was the avarice of a co-conspirator. "Let's call the lawyer first," I said, reaching for my phone. "We should do this properly." "No," Cassandra said, her voice suddenly sharp. She moved to stand between me and the door. "We need to go to the bank first." "No. Before he has a chance to move the money." "What? Why? The police need to do that. The police will seize it as evidence and it could be tied up in courts for years," she insisted, her voice rising. "This is your money, Maya. He stole it from your marital assets. We get the cash, we secure it, then we call the police. We'll give them everything else, but we keep the money safe for you." It was the wrong move. It was illegal. It would jeopardize everything. I stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time in weeks. The frantic energy, the insistence on controlling the process, the focus on the money above all else. "Cassandra," I said slowly, my blood turning to ice. "How did you know the bank statements were in the company's cloud drive? You're a freelance social media manager. You wouldn't have access to the financial servers." Her smile didn't falter, but it tightened at the edges. "I told you I was looking for analytics." "And the photograph of Carl and Chloe? A long lens shot from a restaurant? Who took that, Cassandra? You're not a private investigator." The air in the room grew thick and heavy. The triumphant atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a chilling silence. "I hired someone," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "I used some of the marketing budget. I had a feeling and I was right." "You had a feeling," I repeated, my mind racing, connecting wires I had never thought to connect before. The perfume. It hadn't been jasmine and sandalwood. It had been something else, something I knew. It was Cassandra's signature scent, the one she'd worn for years. A unique blend she had custom-made in Paris. I'd been so blinded by the idea of a mysterious, other woman, that I hadn't recognized the scent of the woman right in front of me. And Chloe Green. The name had meant nothing. Green. Cassandra's mother's maiden name was Green. My legs felt weak. I reached out to steady myself on the bedpost. "Chloe Green," I whispered. "That's you, isn't it? The shell company. The consultant. It's all you." Cassandra's face underwent a terrifying transformation. The mask of the loyal, avenging best friend melted away, revealing a visage of cold, calculating ambition. She didn't deny it. She simply looked at me, and in her eyes I saw the truth. It was a truth more devastating than Carl's betrayal. "You and Carl," I said, the words tasting like ash. "You're in this together. Not him and some blonde. You and him." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Took you long enough, Maya. You were always so trusting." The entire edifice of the last few weeks crumbled around me. There was no other woman. There was only Cassandra. She hadn't been helping me, she had been managing me. She had been feeding me a narrative, directing my anger, using me to help her gather the very evidence that would convict our husband. She had been the architect of this entire charade, and I had been her willing, gullible pawn. "Why?" I gasped, the pain so acute it was a physical wound. "Why would you do this?" "He's my husband." "Was your husband," she corrected coolly. "He's been mine for the past 3 years. Did you really think a man like Carl would be satisfied with a quiet little mouse who arranges throw pillows for a living? He has ambition. He has vision. And you were holding him back." She began to pace, a panther in my bedroom. "The embezzlement was his idea, but the escape plan was mine. David Miller. Costa Rica. It was all so perfect. But he got weak. He started feeling guilty about you. He talked about leaving you a lump sum, about confessing. I couldn't let him ruin everything we'd built." The horror of it unfolded in my mind. "So you turned me against him. You made me the weapon that would destroy him, so he'd have no choice but to run with you. You made me do your dirty work." "Precisely," she said, a smug smile playing on her lips. "With you as the betrayed wife, armed with all this evidence, he'd be facing not just losing his job but prison. His only way out was to disappear with me with the money. And you, my dear naive friend, handed me the keys to his prison cell and the motivation for him to flee. You were the perfect pawn." I felt a rage so pure and so powerful it burned away the last of my grief. I looked at the evidence on the bed, the passport, the keys. They weren't just tools to convict Carl. They were Cassandra's tickets to a new life. With my husband. "It's over, Cassandra," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I know everything now. The police will know everything." She stopped pacing and looked at me, her eyes devoid of any warmth or past friendship. "No, Maya. They won't. Because you're not going to the police." She reached into her large handbag and pulled out a small, sleek pistol. It looked like a toy, but the menace in her eyes was very, very real. "You're going to have a tragic accident. A fall down the stairs, perhaps while your husband is away. Grief-stricken over your death and facing false accusations from an unstable best friend, Carl will have no choice but to disappear. It's a much cleaner story." I was frozen, staring down the barrel of the gun. I had been so focused on the betrayal of my husband that I had completely missed the viper in my inner circle. Her jealousy, her ambition, her thirst for a life she felt she deserved. It had all been festering for years, hidden behind a mask of sisterhood. "Carl would never agree to this," I whispered. "He doesn't know," she said simply. "He's weak. But he'll come around. He always does." She gestured with the gun toward the hallway, toward the top of the steep wooden staircase. "Move." My mind raced, searching for an escape, for a weapon, for anything. My eyes darted around the room, landing on the lockbox, the bed, the nightstand. And then I remembered. The burner phone. I had taken it from the lockbox and hidden it in my boot. But I had left the lockbox itself under the floorboard empty, except for the keys and passport we had just taken out. Carl would have noticed it was missing when he came back. He would have known we were on to him. But he hadn't come back. Cassandra had come alone. "He knows, doesn't he?" I said, a new realization dawning. "Carl. He knows you're here. He knows you're going to do this." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. It was all the confirmation I needed. This was their pact. He would provide the money and the means, and she would provide the ruthless resolution to the Maya problem. He was probably waiting in a hotel room somewhere, ready to play the grieving widower. The depth of his depravity was bottomless. The sound of a key turning in the front door lock echoed through the silent house. Cassandra's head snapped toward the sound, her grip on the gun tightening. He's early. It was my only chance. As she was momentarily distracted, I lunged not at her but for the nightstand where my own phone was charging. I grabbed it and with a frantic, fumbling thumb hit the emergency call button I had pre-programmed weeks ago, then threw it onto the bed, the screen glowing. "Don't move!" Cassandra shrieked, turning the gun back on me. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. Carl appeared in the doorway, his face a mixture of anxiety and grim determination. He took in the scene, Cassandra with the gun, me cornered by the bed, the evidence laid out between us. "Cass, what's taking so long?" he said, his voice tight. "We need to go." "She knows," Cassandra said, her voice trembling slightly. "She knows it's me. She knows everything." Carl's eyes met mine, and in them I saw no remorse, only a desperate animal need to survive. "Then we stick to the plan," he said coldly. "Finish it." In that moment, any last shred of love or pity I had for the man I married evaporated. He was giving the order for my execution. But the throne phone had done its job. From its speaker, a tinny, amplified voice called out, "911, what is your emergency?" The sound was like a bucket of cold water thrown on both of them. Carl's eyes widened in panic. "What did you do?" It was the distraction I needed. While they were both staring at the phone on the bed, I shoved past Cassandra with all my strength, sending her stumbling into Carl. The gun went off with a deafening bang, the bullet embedding itself in the ceiling. Plaster dust rained down. I didn't look back. I sprinted out of the bedroom and down the hallway, not toward the front door but toward the back staircase that led to the kitchen. I could hear them shouting behind me, their careful plan unraveling into chaos. I burst out the back door into our garden, the cool evening air a shock. I didn't stop running. I leaped over flower beds, my heart hammering against my ribs, and scrambled over the back fence into my neighbor's yard. I pounded on their back door, sobbing, screaming for help. The police arrived within minutes. They found Carl and Cassandra still in the house, trying to gather the scattered evidence. The gun was lying on the bed next to my phone, where Cassandra had dropped it in her panic. The 911 operator had heard everything. The confrontation, the gunshot, their damning conversation. The aftermath was a media circus. The arrest of a high-flying tech executive and his mistress for conspiracy to commit murder and grand larceny was front-page news. The evidence Cassandra had so helpfully gathered for me was used against them both. They were charged with a litany of crimes. The fake passport, the embezzlement records, the recorded 911 call. It was an open and shut case. I sold the house, unable to bear the memories that now haunted every room. The divorce was the least of my concerns, a mere formality after everything that had happened. I took a long, solitary trip, not to find myself, but to lose the ghost of the woman I had been. The trusting, naive woman who had been blind to the monsters sharing her bed and her secrets. I learned that betrayal doesn't always come from the shadows. Sometimes, it wears the familiar, smiling face of a best friend. Sometimes it shares your pillow and your life. The craving for power, for money, for a life built on the ruins of someone else's, can turn people into grotesque parodies of themselves. Carl and Cassandra were convicted and received lengthy prison sentences, their dreams of a tropical paradise replaced by the stark reality of a maximum security prison. I now live in a small, modern apartment with a view of the city. I have a new phone number. I have a large, very friendly dog who barks at strangers. And I have a profound, hard-won understanding of the darkness that can reside in the human heart. The scars are still there, a network of fine cracks beneath the surface, but they have hardened into armor. I survived their treachery not because I was lucky but because in the final crucial moment, I chose to stop being a victim and start being a survivor. And as I look out at the glittering city lights, I feel a quiet, unshakable peace. The foundation of my new life is built not on sand, but on the cold, solid stone of truth.